What's up, my fellow adult collectors, and welcome to Civilian Collectibles. Today, since it has been a while for me, I'm going to do a collection update of my main room featuring Storm Collectibles, NECA, McFarlane Toys, and Mattel, covering fandoms such as DC, Mortal Kombat, WWE, and more. If this is your first time on my channel, hi, my name is Seville, and here I'd like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you find this video enjoyable or informative, please give me a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Now, onto the walkthrough, starting with Storm Collectibles. This is my Tekken shelf. They've really only released a handful of characters so far, but King is my newest. Next up is my Street Fighter shelf. I mainly focus on the Street Fighter 2 characters, but I do have Akuma as well since he was heavily featured in Tekken 7. The newest figure here, though, is Zangief. Of course, the main reason I got into Storm Collectibles in the first place, Mortal Kombat. This is my Earthbound Warriors shelf. There's not a whole lot new here, unless you count the Sub-Zero Icy Arms that came with Kentaro. Speaking of Kentaro, he's the newest figure on my Outworld shelf, and he is a beast. Lastly, from Storm, I do have my Injustice shelf, but there's not really anything recent here. However, with a huge influx of McFarlane Toys this year, I've ended up combining all of my DC video game characters onto one shelf. Technically, I know Swamp Thing and Atrocitus are not video game characters, but to me, they look close enough to their Injustice counterparts that I've let them count. I do have one shelf dedicated to McFarlane Toys Mortal Kombat characters, but for me, they're really just placeholders until Storm makes the same characters. Back to DC though, this is my shelf for comic book characters, mostly focused on Superman, along with his allies and enemies, plus the Blackest Night figures. I will buy every single Black Lantern figure McFarlane makes. Also, while I was in the process of making this video, I added in the Future State Superman. The rest of my McFarlane DC figures are all based on the movies. Justice League, Suicide Squad, Black Adam, all that stuff. And to finish off my McFarlane figures, I do still have some based on the old Matrix films. Also, I do still have some of my older DC figures from Mattel and DC Direct, but I do hope that eventually McFarlane will get to these versions as well. Moving on to NECA, here's my Ninja Turtles shelf, featuring characters from both parts 1 and 2 of the original 90s films. The newest characters here are probably April O'Neil and the darker version of Super Shredder. Now, the bookshelves that used to hold my comic book trade paperbacks instead holds the rest of my NECA figures. Predators, aliens, horror, sci-fi, all that stuff. Aside from the newest Robocop and a couple of Xenomorphs, there's not really much new going on in here though. And finally, last but certainly not least, wrestling. Lots of wrestling. Over the past several months, I've almost redone these displays entirely. I've separated them mostly by era, I've added acrylic staircases so they can all be seen more clearly. Most of my favorite stables are kept together, like the New World Order, D-Generation X, the Ministry of Darkness, all that stuff. There are some exceptions sprinkled throughout, like the NWO version of John Cena being with the main group, even though we all know he officially never was. Then the bald version of The Rock, which is technically post-Attitude Era, but I still keep him with that shelf instead. Then, of course, we have my two favorite characters, The Undertaker and Kane, who have been in multiple eras across multiple decades. They now reside on the very top shelf, covering the whole thing. Now, onto my main modern shelf. I do have a handful of AEW characters, but this shelf is primarily those who are currently in WWE today. It is getting a little jam-packed on here, but they do have a giant roster right now. And finally, the last display on this video is my current champion shelf. It's probably already a little outdated by the time you're watching this, because I did set it up right before Crown Jewel, while Alexa and Asuka had the Women's Tag Team Championships. That is it for this round. Now, I've got to get to work on my next video, which will be pretty much all Hasbro, featuring Marvel, Power Rangers, and Star Wars. I've got a lot of new things to rearrange and set up. I'll see y'all when I'm done.